All right. Good morning, everyone. Nothing like kicking off a Tuesday talking about enterprise blockchain, but we do have the most fun people in the business up here with us. So we'll get a good day going. Before we get into the higher level trends and issues that we want to discuss in the space, Morgan, let's kick it off with you. Give us a brief intro of your role within the blockchain space.
Sure. Nice to see everyone. My name is Morgan Krupetsky. I head institutions and capital markets at Avalabs. For those who might not be familiar, Avalabs is a for-profit software company building infrastructure and tooling to really help to drive forward the growth and adoption of the Avalanche blockchain. Avalanche is a network of natively interoperable networks that are customized for a whole host of different use cases and industries. So you can kind of think about Avalanche as the bottom layer of the tech stack.
Right. And tell us about the work you're doing at Digital Asset.
Hi everyone, I'm Shol Kfir. I'm the co-founder of Digital Asset. Digital Asset is a technology company behind Canton, which is a L1 blockchain that's being used today by all of the tier 1 banks globally. It is a public permission mainnet. And before Canton, I was working up to 11 years ago on zero knowledge proofs, co-authored one of the first Snark library that's been used by Zcash and spawned off the whole area of zero knowledge proofs and Snarks in the space.
Right. And Paul?
I'm Paul Brody, global blockchain leader at EY. Obviously one of the big four. We're a little bit unique in that not only do we do the traditional things of consulting and tax advice and financial statement audits, but in particular, we're specialists in public blockchains and especially Ethereum. And we build applications on the Ethereum blockchain. And in particular, we have built privacy infrastructure for Ethereum, a layer 2 privacy network based on zero knowledge proofs called Nightfall.
And finally, Greg.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Bell. I'm the SVP at the HBAR Foundation, the venture arm of Hedera. Hedera is a highly scalable enterprise-grade protocol that is open source and unique in that it's permissioned in terms of the validation. So institutions such as IBM, Google, Mondelez, Nomura, LG, Hitachi, and many, many more are validating the transactions on Hedera.
So let's talk about some of the higher level trends. Morgan, we'll start with you, and certainly everyone feel free to jump in. While you all sit within the enterprise blockchain space, your specific verticals are trends that you've been able to discern. So tell us what you're seeing, Morgan, because you tend to focus more in the capital markets area.
Sure. So I would say that historically what we've seen was the emergence of what we'd call enterprise blockchains, chains that may or may not have been EVM compatible and are kind of considered, isolated islands in and of themselves. And I think historically none of them really gained true kind of adoption from an enterprise or institutional standpoint, even though there are a lot of institutions still building on them, largely for regulatory reasons. I think over time with the kind of creation of different networks like Avalanche, institutions have started to realize that they can really get the best of both public blockchain infrastructure and innovation, robust DeFi ecosystems and developer communities, with being able to address a lot of the compliance, control, privacy, and interoperability that they need in order to really kind of see their deployments be fit for purpose. And so from an Avalanche standpoint, the network really does provide the best of both for institutions. And I would say that Avalanche is definitely fit for purpose for institutions and enterprises, but it's not an enterprise blockchain.
Right. So Paul, follow on about that as it relates to the public blockchain and privacy tech, which I know is a focus for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really believe basically enterprises are not going to touch this space without privacy. And, you'll hear people talk about will every company have their own Validium or Rollup or something like that? I don't really foresee that because the purpose of blockchain is to have composable interactions with other firms. So privacy, the ability to have privacy and then interact with a bunch of your business partners is incredibly important. Where we are right now is that we are finally at a point where we're just starting to sample the initial scalable, secure business transactions that we can do on public chain. So we've got one of our first supply chain pilots, fully tokenized supply chain, dirt to data center. And we have another one, which is one of our first procurement applications running under privacy on public Ethereum. So we're really just at the starting phases of making this stuff work at scale with privacy.
Yeah. And then, Shel, from your perspective, what are some of the higher level trends that you're seeing?
I think there are a few trends we're seeing. One is the adoption is really accelerating across enterprises. So if a few years ago we saw people going kind of dabbling with POCs and POCs pilots, we're seeing a lot of companies going straight into production use cases. So they have the business the business case understood. Just to give a sense, today on Canton subnets are coordinating north of $3 trillion a month of real world asset transactions. And we're no longer seeing these kind of toes in the water. We're seeing actually things going sometimes as soon as 6 months from starting to build into production, and sometimes it takes a few years. We're also definitely seeing a consolidation. If in the early days we had this bifurcation of private permission networks and public permissionless networks, and people had to kind of pick and choose between one or the other, we're seeing the design space starting to consolidate, and people are getting more comfortable with hybrids, which are public permissioned networks or public networks where you can build permissioned applications on public networks. And it's the first time that we're starting to see applications that have both the privacy that Paul spoke about, the interoperability across applications, and also the level of control that a regulated enterprise needs over their assets. So it's accelerating very significantly, and that trend is starting from capital markets, but we're seeing that in many other industries as well.
So, Greg, it's fair to say that the space is maturing.
Yeah, so I think there are two key trends that we're seeing. The first really is around consumer engagement. So institutions and enterprises that are finding new creative ways to engage with their customer base. This could be, firms like Mondelez, the maker of Oreo cookies, that's finding new ways to engage with their consumers through coupons. And Web3 companies like Karate Combat that are finding new ways to interact with their martial arts fans through the tokenization of their karate fan engagement tool. The second real path is around digital twins. Now, these are forms of a digital birth certificate, and companies throughout the ecosystem are utilizing a digital means of representing a digital product in a real world product in a digital format. And so we're really excited about the evolution of both of these.
Are there industries that are adopting blockchain technology more aggressively than others?
Yeah, so, today, Hedera has over 70 billion transactions since inception. That is more than the total number of transactions of the 5 next blockchains. And we're adding about 100 million transactions per day. It's a highly scalable protocol. And the majority of those, the vast majority of these transactions are in fact supply chain related. And so supply chain is that digital twin. It's representing a piece of information and the birth of a product throughout its life cycle from creation all the way to retirement. And this is an area that we're seeing a significant amount of adoption. Enterprises, when they are looking for a solution, they need something that has high throughput, the speed to engage with, the speed of a checkout counter. They need 100% uptime. And we believe that a lot of these reasons are why enterprises are turning and adopting Hedera for supply chain examples. Now, the reality is that many of us in this room today are, consuming produce and wearing apparel that's being recorded on Hedera. And, it's really an amazing breadth of adoption, whether that is in the automobile sector, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, apparel, and it expands. So the scale of 70 billion transactions, and to give you context, Ethereum just had as of July, 3 billion. So there's a significant volume of transactions that are being recorded, mostly in supply chain by institutions.
Yeah.
I would maybe just add to that. We're seeing a lot of adoption, to your point, in terms of financial services, but in particular from the asset management side of things. I think in particular, asset managers obviously aren't regulated like a bank is regulated. So they have been a lot more nimble in terms of in production deployments and deploying on public permissionless chains in a permission to compliant way. But I think a lot of them who are launching tokenized money market funds, literally everyone and their mom is launching tokenized money market funds. I think a lot of them are looking at the $170 billion in market cap of stable coins on chain today that's not generating any yield. And so thinking, okay, let's convert some of that to some of our product and inherently kind of increase our AUM, increase our top line revenue. And then once we have these institutions and individuals kind of onboarded into our ecosystem, then we can start rolling out additional products and services that are potentially further out the risk spectrum, especially as rates go down. But the tokenization specifically to kind of selling to a more crypto native audience has been picking up, I would say, over the past 5 years.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I hate to be disagreeable and a party pooper, but I am going to be. So I would say in the world of enterprise adoption, there's really two things that are going on. There's a financial services adoption where we have stable coins and real world assets like treasury bonds, and people are properly tokenizing them and they're moving them around. But I think the truth is that the vast majority of what people are claiming are enterprise or supply chain transactions are not substantively supply chain transactions. They are timestamps, they are notarizations of transactions. They are not real, true blockchain native transactions like tokenization. And I say this because, we don't have, if you are an enterprise and you tokenize the stuff that you move around on chain, there's huge benefits to this. There's enormous benefits for tokenization, right? You can do delivery versus payment. You can implement complex business agreements and smart contracts. The only problem is, if any large company did this on a public blockchain or even on a private blockchain that had other companies in the ecosystem, they would be disclosing material non-public information. How many widgets you have, where they are in the supply chain, how much you paid for them. And the truth is, I don't have, and I am not aware of a single company that is fully tokenizing their true supply chain operations on a blockchain anywhere. Period, end of story. And the reason is the lack of privacy. We just won our first pilot engagement to do proper full tokenization of a supply chain from dirt to the data center, like the memory chips, boards, movement to 3PLs, everything done under privacy. And I'll tell you, to our knowledge, it's the first true, fully private supply chain model in the world, and it's just a pilot. And secondly, everything that is easy without privacy is insanely difficult under privacy. You want to do something very simple, that's easy without privacy. Tell me where I made all these memory chip tokens. Tell me where they are. Tell me, half of them are defective. Tell me which customers have them. That is really hard in a privacy model. The point of privacy is to keep that information a secret, and you have to do incredibly complex stuff with ZK Snarks and off-chain data storage to manage differential levels of traceability in privacy, under privacy with proper tokenization. But I would argue that anything less than proper full tokenization is really not worth doing. If you properly tokenize stuff, you get a couple of really critical benefits. Number one, you can do things like financial services, delivery versus payment, financial services like borrow against the value of your inventory assets. Secondly, though, when you tokenize stuff, the whole point of one of the great values of blockchain is if I give you inventory, it has to come out of mine and go into yours. And when I transfer it to you, you're not re-entering the data, you're taking control of it. And both of those things are vastly better than what's done today, which is really no true reconciliation between companies, and everybody duplicates their data and makes errors along the way. But I think it would be too glib and too superficial to tell you it's all going smoothly and everybody's adopting it and there's billions of supply chain transactions. There are not in any meaningful way.
So the value is absolutely in the ability to reduce reconciliation costs, right? Having dispersed databases is a problem because it doesn't create a single source of truth. When you have a public network that is able to bring multiple parties together to align on that single source of truth, you're reducing billions of dollars in costs across a chain. When it comes to supply chain, take shoes as an example, right? The digital birth certificate occurs when the materials first come together. Now they go through multiple different parties across the production, and when you get to a warehouse, it's very important that the warehouse knows exactly in real time their inventory, all the way to a distributor, to a retailer, and then ultimately at the checkout counter. Then somebody buys that shoe. If they bring it back and return it, that's vital information that everyone in the supply chain needs to know. If there's an error in the manufacturing, then being able to validate when that occurred is very important. And so there are a number of different applications that are occurring.
But Charles, did you think that anyone thought it was going to be a one-size-fits-all solution and will solve the problems of the world? I mean, being able to detect is the supply chain and discern where the inefficiencies were, I think is a good thing. But, getting to Paul's point, getting it trusted and having that privacy umbrella around it, I think that's going to be the next hurdle for that full-scale, true blockchain adoption. So how do you get there? What's that solution look like?
Yeah, so first of all, I think people did think there's a one-size-fits-all. So going back, I mentioned my background in zero-knowledge proof industry. So I saw kind of the beginning of this industry, and I was very early in the Bitcoin technical space, and people did think, okay, we're going to build it. If we go back, Bitcoin built a blockchain as an implementation detail of a single application. Then things like Mastercoin, Ethereum went and expanded that and said, we're going to use the same technology, but really, what was considered by the founders as a bug, the transparency, somewhere along the lines has become the feature. Oh, these things aren't transparent. That's a feature. From the perspective of an enterprise, that's not a feature. That's a bug. You can't have things transparent, exactly as Paul was saying. Now, there are different privacy technologies. Zero-knowledge proof is one. Kenton uses a different privacy technology. There are different privacy technologies, but I agree that is the non-starter. You must have privacy. And for years, I felt people are kind of not really seeing this, and many people in the crypto space were saying, "Hey, we're just going to build it, and everyone's going to learn from us, and they're going to come." And now we're seeing the crypto space coming to a realization: no, we must have privacy, and trying to retrofit privacy with snarks and zero-knowledge proofs and roll-ups on top of crypto. But I agree, you really need to have the token as the instrument that's on the chain. It must be interoperable, and what we're seeing today is that most of the real-world assets being deployed on mainnets are not actually interoperable because from a legal perspective, they are not the books and records of that asset. And as I was saying, that is starting to change. If you look at things that are like Goldman Sachs' digital asset platform, HSBC's Orion, BNP's Neobot, they're actually using a technology in a way that the blockchain can be the books and records, can give you true DeFi, interoperability across assets, delivery versus payment, but also give the level of control and privacy that an enterprise needs. So we're starting to see that. I think it's starting from capital markets. Back to the question of who's adopting. Capital markets have the clearest financial problems and incentives. They can come and quantify and say, if we build this use case, is going to solve for our 20 customers, $50 million per year of capital costs. So they can put a real return on the investment up front. That's where we're seeing the earliest adoption and the most aggressive adoption within financial services and specifically in capital markets. But we're definitely seeing it across many industries, everything from sports betting and insurance and even coordination across different governmental agencies in defense use cases.
Yeah, I mean, they're marketplaces at the end of the day, right? Whether you're talking about iGaming, you're talking about traditional stock exchanges and so forth. But I think what's interesting is from the reporter perspective, what we're hearing in these trends and so forth is it's no longer so much about evangelizing the potential that blockchain technology has, but I would say it's about user experience. The conversations are all coming back to that. And to your point earlier, you're seeing consolidation in the space, which lends to the fact that it's maturing. But when you're focusing on user experience and not trying to get the use cases across, I feel like that's an important hurdle that's been crossed.
I think we've concluded that privacy is important.
Right.
That's definitely kind of a major component from an institutional adoption standpoint. I think a lot of the issues in terms of kind of challenges going forward are actually not technological. Like, there's a lot of things that are either being actively worked on and or have already been solved as it relates to, again, privacy, but also digital identity as well as interoperability, things that are going to be inherently important as we see kind of broader mass adoption. But some of the things that you guys referenced are not technological challenges, but more regulatory challenges in that, for example, a lot of kind of assets, financial assets that are being tokenized today in a lot of parts of the world are dual administered, right? So it adds more cost, if anything. I mean, there's certain parts of the world, particularly throughout Europe, where you can have the blockchain be the kind of native asset registry. And so that helps to eliminate a lot of the kind of inefficiencies and costs that kind of are inherent in dual processing a particular asset. But I think that kind of regulatory clarity needs to expand across multiple jurisdictions, and also the fact that at this point, from a KYC standpoint, there's a reason why many banks still have to do their own KYC, right? So technically right now, or technologically right now, you can leverage somebody else's KYC and you can rely on it, but regulatorily, that's not the case at this point as much as we hope that it is. So there's a lot of kind of TradFi lack of interoperability that it still exists from a regulatory standpoint that I think we still need to get through in order to really see this on-chain world really start to see greater adoption.
Right, which is also the challenge across the board outside of financial services as well, because you have multiple jurisdictions, not only in the U.S., but globally. And each industry has different types of regulations around it. Healthcare, financial services, as an example, are the most heavily regulated industries. So getting a cohesive framework, you want that so you understand how to operate, but you don't want to stifle the innovation and implementation of these applications. And Paul, EY Global Business, you're working with multiple industries and advising them. What are some of the challenges that you're hearing from clients, and how are you advising them to operate in this environment?
So it's interesting, like if you take the financial services side, the regulatory part is very complicated and sort of matching up all the pieces is very difficult. Over on the non-financial services side, honestly, like there's really no regulatory obstacles to tokenizing your inventory, using it for infrastructure management. Like one of the things that's odd and sort of interesting is that like regulatory approvals have a positive effect on enterprise adoption, even when the enterprise use case in question requires no regulatory approval. So it's kind of interesting, but they definitely respond to the animal spirits of the industry, and they do care about it in the long term, right? If you think about like every business agreement is money for stuff, right? Eventually they want to close the circle with a payment using money. And we are on the cusp of seeing a lot of significant activity around incorporating wallets into ERP systems, which is super exciting. Integrated wallets, integrated custody tools, so that enterprises can pay using blockchain-based stablecoins directly from inside their ERP system, right? And from my point of view as an enterprise guy, the best user interface, by the way, no user interface at all, full automation.
We're actually not seeing any regulatory challenges these days, even within capital markets. So I think the crypto space did a huge disservice to ourselves by really trying to push so hard on, we must change regulations for everything. I think the regulatory clarity over the last year has been amazing, and I think actually in most cases the regulators actually did a very, very good job. It's been, I think, 2, maybe even 3 years since the last time that we've seen any project get stuck on regulatory approvals, and even within capital markets, even when it touches main chain. So there's always a level of bureaucracy to go through to get the approvals, but it's really no longer a problem. The tech is at a point where the tech can work within the regulatory frameworks that exist. The challenges we're seeing today are much more around one of two things: either people who have already invested political capital within their organizations on what I think is technological dead end, and sometimes it's a bit hard to backtrack from that, and really people trying to understand how business models evolve in this institutional DeFi space. It's really not about can we do this. The answer is out there. Yes, we can do it. There are trillions of dollars tokenized on blockchains at this point in production, being used every day. The question at this point really is, okay, how does this impact our business model? Because we realize there's some foundational shift happening here, and we have an old business model, but we don't really know what the new business model. I think that's kind of the biggest maybe concern or problem that we see the organizations that we're working with face today.
Yeah, and by the way, we have 45 seconds here, Greg, but to Shaul's point here, this is not the first time that industries have experienced automation and, improvements in terms of data governance and efficiencies and so forth. So this could potentially be the next logical step in getting, to the next level.
Well, to Paul's point, we're really excited about the interoperability and integrating systems directly into the applications that enterprises are using. And so we brought an open source tool called the Hedera Asset Tokenization Studio to market recently, and that's a tool to enable the quick tokenization of compliant products. One of the challenges that we've also seen is that it's difficult for enterprises to be able to hold HBAR. And so we're really excited that the Stephen McClurg and the team behind the Valkyrie Bitcoin ETF is at it again and just recently filed and launched the HBAR Trust, which is a private vehicle for enterprises, institutions, RIAs to be able to acquire and safely hold HBAR and engage more in the ecosystem.
All right, everyone, appreciate your insights. Thanks for joining us this morning at Mainnet, and thank you for all of you guys joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.